A massive explosion, a Texas refinery in flames, black smoke over the Gulf Coast. Valero says it's an accident. Iran hasn't claimed it. Israel hasn't been asked. But this is one of the world's largest oil refinery, and America is at war. The cause is unknown. The timing is impossible to ignore. A massive explosion tore through Valero's Port Arthur oil refinery in Texas, sending towering columns of black smoke into the Gulf Coast sky and triggering an immediate shelter-in-place order for thousands of residents in the surrounding area. Local emergency management officials ordered residents across a large swath of land near the facility to stay indoors. Valero confirmed a fire had broken out in one of the refinery's units, but said all personnel had been accounted for.
To ensure the safety of all residents in the vicinity and in light of the recent explosion at the Valero refinery, an immediate shelter-in-place is ordered. Worker safety remains a top priority.
The refinery, located roughly 90 miles east of Houston, processes around 435,000 barrels of crude oil per day and employs nearly 800 workers. It is one of the largest refining operations in the United States. The explosion comes as America is in active military conflict with Iran, and the timing has set off a firestorm of speculation online. Iran, however, has not claimed any involvement. What makes the question harder to dismiss entirely is the backdrop. The Strait of Hormuz is effectively closed. Iraq has declared force majeure on oil production. Global crude has crossed $100 a barrel. Port Arthur feeds the Colonial Pipeline, which moves 2.5 million barrels a day to the American East Coast. If the refinery faces an extended shutdown, fuel prices across the Gulf Coast could spike well ahead of the rest of the country. But there is another theory circulating, one that points not to Iran but to Israel. Washington and Tehran have been in back-channel negotiations, with President Trump publicly stating on March 24th that Iran wants to reach a deal. Israel, which has consistently opposed any rapprochement between the two countries, has in the past taken steps to complicate American diplomacy in the region. The question being raised is whether the explosion could be a false flag operation designed to derail those talks by making Iran look responsible. No intelligence agency has publicly supported this claim, and it remains for now in the realm of speculation. But the geopolitical timing is difficult to ignore. What began as an industrial fire in a Texas refinery town has, within hours, become a geopolitical question with no clear answer. Investigations are ongoing, the cause remains unconfirmed, and the world is watching. One of the world's most critical shipping lanes can suddenly be laced with explosives. That is not hypothetical anymore, but a threat, on the record, from Iran's Defense Council, issued on March 23rd. Iran has warned that any military strike on its southern coast or islands would trigger the laying of sea mines across the entire Gulf, including, and this is key, floating mines released directly from Iran's shoreline.
Any attempt to attack Iran's coasts or islands will cause all access routes in the Gulf to be mined with various types of sea mines, including floating mines that can be released from the coast. One should not forget the failure of more many than 100 minesweepers in the 1980s in removing a few sea mines.
The warning came hours after Axios reported that Washington is actively weighing plans to occupy or blockade Karg Island, Iran's main oil export hub, to force Tehran to reopen the Strait of Hormuz to all shipping fully. The Iranian Defense Council also made clear that for non-belligerent countries, the only legal passage through the Strait of Hormuz now runs through Iranian coordination. No permission or passage. On the same day, Iran's Revolutionary Guards came out swinging on a separate front, this time over power. On Saturday, US President Donald Trump had warned that Iranian power plants would be struck if Tehran did not, in his words, fully open the Strait of Hormuz within 48 hours. The Guards responded Monday with a direct line-for-line threat.
If you hit electricity, we hit electricity.
The Guards specified what that means in practice. Retaliation would target power plants supplying American military bases across the region and Israeli electricity infrastructure as well. Meanwhile, Ebrahim Zolfagari, spokesperson for Iran's Qatam al-Anbiya central headquarters, said that Israeli and US forces are under constant surveillance by Iranian military intelligence.
The terrorist Israeli and American military personnel are warned that they are being fully monitored by the operational intelligence units of our armed forces, and hiding in settlements, such as hiding in a settlement in Arad, does not save their lives due to the intelligence dominance of the armed forces.
Zolfagari also claimed that recent Iranian strikes have shifted the balance of the conflict.
The strategic confusion of the CENTCOM commander, the collapse of the multi-layered American-Israeli defense network in the Middle East, and the disruption of the US arms support system following the measures and strikes of the Iranian armed forces against hostile enemies have changed the equations of war in favor of Iran. The anger and desperation of the American and Zionist warmongers were predictable, and we had previously warned about the quagmire of war for the United States and the Zionist regime, and a regional and all-encompassing war.
As the war in the Middle East refuses to slow down, Iran is now signaling on every front simultaneously. Mines, power grids, surveillance, deterrence. The question is whether Washington reads these as negotiating postures or as operational orders already in motion. Twenty 20% of the world's oil passes through one narrow choke point, the Strait of Hormuz. Now, as war tensions ripple across the region, a new player is cautiously stepping into the conversation: Japan. But not with missiles, not with warships, with a question: what happens after the fighting stops? Because on Sunday, Japan's Foreign Minister Toshimitsu Motegi floated a scenario that signals just how serious the situation has become.
If there were to be a complete ceasefire, hypothetically speaking, then things like minesweeping could come up. This is purely hypothetical, but if a ceasefire were established and naval mines were creating an obstacle, then I think that would be something to consider.
This isn't military escalation, this is contingency planning for chaos. Because if the Strait of Hormuz is mined, even after a ceasefire, the global economy doesn't just slow down, it chokes. Japan knows this better than most. Nearly 90% of its oil flows through that single corridor. And right now, that corridor is under threat. The war, now stretching into its fourth week, has already pushed oil prices upward, forcing countries, including Japan, to tap into emergency reserves. Behind the scenes, diplomacy is moving just as fast. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi revealed he had spoken directly with Motegi about a critical possibility: allowing Japanese-linked vessels to pass safely through the strait. A fragile opening, but one that depends entirely on whether the guns fall silent. Meanwhile, pressure is building from Washington. US President Donald Trump met Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi, urging her to step up. The ask? Send warships, help reopen the strait. So far, Japan has resisted, because this isn't just about capability, it's about law. Japan's post-war pacifist constitution sharply limits military action overseas. Even with expanded powers under its 2015 security legislation, any deployment must meet strict conditions: an existential threat, no alternatives, and clear justification. So Tokyo is walking a tightrope, balancing alliance pressure, energy dependence, and constitutional limits. Takaichi, after meeting Trump, made it clear Japan is defining exactly what it can and cannot do. No commitments. Not yet. But one thing is certain. If a ceasefire comes and the waters remain dangerous, Japan could find itself stepping into one of the most sensitive military roles in the world. Not to fight, but to clean up the aftermath of war. Because in modern conflict, the end of fighting doesn't mean the end of danger. Sometimes, it's just the beginning of a different kind of battle. One fought beneath the surface, invisible and just as deadly.